to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company Window Works from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. Cathy Maready joins us today to share the wisdom that she's earned from running her North Carolina interior design business, Elephant Ears, since 1990. Cathy's projects include domestic and international, multi-level, and multi-million-dollar commercial and residential projects. Cathy has a special approach to building client relationships, and right after I thank our show sponsor, Revelwoods, we're going to hear how Cathy turns the art of listening into great design and long-standing clients. I think we can all agree that high-end clients are more inclined to hire full-service firms, right? High-end clients want you to handle more details, more products, more services for them. They want to feel like you have everything handled, not just some of the things handled. Working with a revolutionary system put together by Revelwoods, you can easily add hardwood flooring to your full-service offerings, regardless of your experience in specifying wood flooring. With their expert knowledge and service, Revelwoods walks you through the entire process and stays with you from the initial sampling through installation if that's what you need. With true wholesale pricing, you can now be competitive with the flooring retailers on the highway. And with protected branding, your client cannot shop you at those same retailers on the highway. So learn more today. Go to revelwoods.com, R-E-V-E-L, woods.com, and open up your pro account today. Be the firm that handles it all at revelwoods.com. All right, you ready to meet Cathy Maready? Me too. Hi, Cathy. Thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Thanks, LuAnn. I'm just really honored to be a part of your podcast. I've been a fan for a while, and I'm just so honored to be a part of today.
Well, I am glad to have you, and I welcome you to our homies here, our group. And I'm looking forward to the interview too, Cathy. It's interesting because I don't typically I don't talk about design, right? So we don't have interviews about how to design or the styling of designing and all those things. But it's interesting because in one hand, the conversation that you suggested that we have in your email to me sort of reads as if it's about designing. But when I complement that, when I stack that with your 30 years experience of practicing high-end interior design, I feel like it actually is a deeper conversation that is something that results in probably getting more projects, closing more projects, for example, and having a more successful experience for the client. So you said to me, if you listen to your client, really listen, you will find their passion and their loves. And if you let these passions guide your design, you will always make them enjoy their space. Okay. And so I think what I'm saying is, I think we know that, but I think there's probably something you're going to teach us about actually doing that comes based on that 30 years of successfully doing it. Am I on the right track here?
You are definitely on the right track.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I think to really make a long-lasting client, a long-term client, you really want to get to know them. You want them to get to trust you. And to do that, you've got to really understand them as a human being. And a good example would have been a project I did in France where Um, the wife was French, and the husband was a pathologist here in the United States. And they had an old silk factory that had 5 fireplaces in the living room, and um, it was a mess. It needed everything, and I just started listening to them. She loved France, and she wanted her kids to be bilingual. And he was a pathologist that went back and forth, and he loved Louis Pasteur.
Mm.
And I really didn't know anything about Louis Pasteur, so I looked him up. And Louis Pasteur, and this is so relevant for today's world, he discovered how germs are spread, but
Mm.
also how sickness can be prevented by vaccines.
Mm.
So he was a star in this man's eye. Well, Louis Pasteur helped cure a blight in the wormy chestnut trees in France. So I took that and the raw silk. Yeah, since it was a silk factory, I used raw silks and chestnut wood for the
Mm.
entire plan.
Mm.
And they loved it because it was their passion. It was their world, France and pathology and um, beauty, and it just fit their lifestyle.
You know what I love about this is reminding me of two different past episodes, two different previous guests. One is
Mm.
Katie Deedy from Grow House Grow. And Katie Deedy is a phenomenal young lady that is in the Brooklyn area, and she designs custom wallpaper. But every wallpaper she designs, every line she designs is based on a story. So it would be
Oh.
exactly like that. It would be that story, and then maybe there would be, I don't know, I don't know what it would be on it, but and then the other episode that it reminds me of is the episode with Daryl Long, that he was saying, Pinterest is killing the creativity of a generation of interior designers, that they're not trained. And he's calling out that we need to be sure to challenge and train our new generation of interior designers to look beyond someone else's images for inspiration, to look into architecture and things,
Mhm,
and of course, like to your point, into story and into meaning to the particular
mhm.
client. That's really pretty. I love that. I mean, I imagine this couple really, like you said, having these deep passions entwined in throughout their home. And it might be that no one that comes into the house knows it unless they share the story. But then in the sharing of the story, I can imagine their passion and their joy, but also just walking through their home, knowing that these things are there, right?
Right, and it's something that they can create conversations with and um, learn from, and uh, I don't know. It was a great path. Another project I worked on, the woman was a lover of the loggerhead turtles that swim back and forth between the east coast of the United States over to Africa every year.
Wow.
And she had this beautiful home on the ocean. And I had the rugs, I looked up the ocean currents that these loggerhead turtles fight to get over to Africa. And they have this sonar that allows them to find this spot where they were last year. Somehow they navigate to that exact same location. God only knows. And so I designed in the rug the currents, that the typical currents that these loggerheads go, and it was an abstract pattern, but we put it in the rug and we put it in some fabrics in her pillows, and it was stunning. It was so beautiful, but it meant something to her subliminally. It meant something to her about how she lives her passion and the
I
currents
love
of
it.
those
I
oceans.
just love it. It's so amazing. I mean, you know what it is? It's of course, is this a unique idea? No, it's not a unique idea. But how many designers take the time to put that effort and that discipline in? And I could see how, when I take that to a business lesson, if I'm your client and you do one
Mhm,
room with me and you put that sort of effort to tie something that I live in every day so
mhm.
intrinsically to my emotions and my passions, am I even ever thinking about like calling another designer ever? Like, No, I am locked in for life.
Yeah,
Right?
and it's true. We become really good friends because it invites conversation, and it invites um, all kinds of insight into their psyches,
Mm,
and they learn to trust you.
yes.
And I'm on fourth and fifth houses with some of my clients now, so um, it does
Yeah.
help. I think. I
Yeah.
think
So
that's
it's
genuine.
creating loyalty. It creates and confirms trust because honestly, what's a better trust builder than somebody shares some offhand passion that they just think they're chatting with you. They don't think we're talking about the pillows and the sofas yet, right? And they
Right.
share something with you. And then they hear when you come back with the design that they've been heard, and now that is a huge trust builder. It's like, you remember I told you about the turtles that I love? Like, whoa, they're in
Hmm.
my rug now. Like that's the path is the design in the rug. That is a tremendous trust builder. There's no question.
Hmm.
So let me ask you. So you have, three, four junior designers, interns, senior designers, whatever their different titles are, working for you. How
Hmm.
do you teach them to do this? Because maybe are there steps to teach your designers that work for you how to do this? I guess is really just the question.
Yeah, I think, some people are better at it than others. I do believe that. And one thing that I do, to just get off subject for a second, when I hire people, um, I hire them because they're better at me at something. I
Mm,
have one girl, I think she is by far one of the most spectacular texture and color creators. Um, I look at it and I'm just wowed. I never would have pulled it together like that.
mm,
And I have one girl that's really good with space planning. Um, so I get them all to try to accent those, um, I guess, qualities, and to try to relate them to the client. You know, one of the things I teach is really look at your client's eyes and their skin tones, their hair colors, what they wear, how they wear it. Doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to put those same colors in their house, but it means that I want their eyes to be highlighted. I want their skin tones to be warm and special so that they feel beautiful in their space.
wow, you just opened up a whole nother can of worms for me.
Oh,
I want to ask you about that, but I want to flip back for a second before we move the other.
uh-huh,
When I asked you, how do you teach the designers to do this
uh-huh,
incredible inquiry process, right? And you said, instead, let me just tell you first off that when I look to hire, I'm looking for people that have skill sets that they do something better than me. And so I love
hmm,
that, number one. But number two, just to tie that up, is that because in your mind, now together, you're all the team. So maybe your superpower, among others, I'm 100% sure, but your superpower is making this deep connection with a client and finding out what really is at the heart of their motivations. So it's okay. You're going to teach a designer that you do this. You're going to encourage them to do this own process. But if you're the best one in the room on your team to do that, that's okay because you've hired them for a superpower that you don't have.
correct.
Love it. Love it.
I think it makes a great team.
Yes.
And I think everybody has their own individuality that way. They have their own confidence that way, and they feel like they're an intrinsically important part of the business.
I love it. You know what? And you're right. I think about the Window Works team, and I
Hmm.
mean, a minute after Kim started working for us more than 10 years ago, I knew she's we call her the fabric savant. It's like it's crazy. It's she just will
Oh,
literally be in the showroom and you'll be working with a designer or a direct consumer client and they'll be describing, "Oh, want to have something that feels like this, looks like that." And she'll just look and she'll go, "Oh, yeah, hang on. I have to have 2,000 books in my showroom." She'll walk over to a shelf, pull a book and say, "Like this?" And I just look at her like, What did you do
Oh,
that?
yeah. I
Yes.
love it.
It's crazy.
Hmm.
And so it is. It's fun and exciting to have people with you and around you that you really do know are better than you at some things. It's exciting and it feels supported and safe too, doesn't it?
It really does.
Mm.
It really does.
No, you're making
And
me think about the feeling.
yeah, we try to treat our vendors the same way. And it goes back to, inclusivity and diversity even. But you want every part of your team to feel special. You want all of your vendors to feel special, all
Mm.
of your sales reps, because they make your job.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Without it, you really don't exist
Yeah.
well, and you don't exist long term.
Right, 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 right. It takes a village. It takes a village to do
Yes.
everything in this world, right?
Yep.
So true. So now I want to go to that where you think about and look at your client's eyes and their skin tone and the clothing they wear when you design. That is a first for me, Cathy, in 650
Mhm.
plus episodes. Tell us a little bit about that. How, I mean, really, I mean, I can't even imagine that layer when you're deciding on colors and textures. Talk to us about that.
Well, my first, I don't know why, I've always been attracted to the human eye. It's a beautiful, beautiful instrument, right? And the colors vary, and a blue eye sometimes is made up of green specks. It's sometimes made up of brown specks, but everyone's eye is different. And when you use that with their skin tones and bring it together, a blue-eyed person is sometimes the easiest because there's so many blues and greens, and just seems to be a natural monochromatic palette that you can make a woman feel beautiful, or a man.
Mm.
And and that's one thing that I do teach my employees, that I really want you to pay attention. Are they clean and crisp? Are they cowboy? Are they uh, Adrian Barbeau? I mean, whoever they are, you want to take notice.
And do you discuss that with your client, or it's like, would you say to somebody, oh, I've developed this palette because looking at your eye color and your skin tone, this is going to make you, when you catch yourself in the mirror in this room, you're going to feel like $1 million? Or do you just do it and that's not part of the conversation, and then it's just an extra subliminal, happy factor that your client experiences in their space?
No, we tell them, and I
Mm.
think that's another way to gain trust. They've noticed that you've noticed
Mm.
their beauty,
Mm.
and you want to translate that into their home.
Have you ever had somebody look at you and say, "What? You want to figure it out with my skin tone?"
Yeah, some of them are surprised, but everybody, all of us want to feel beautiful, right? I mean, there's not one person that wants to feel ugly.
I don't know. Like, I got to think there's some very practical people like me out there. Like, well, I'm not the one looking at myself in my house. And what if is it I was going to say to you, what if the colors that someone likes are not colors that are complementary to their skin tone? But I wonder if you find that it's like a phenomenon that we are intrinsically attracted to colors that automatically are complementary to our skin tone.
Hmm. I think that is largely true. Someone that likes bright colors is usually the hardest one, because you just have to find the right hues that complement them.
Mm.
And a lot of times the whole game of interior design is teaching your client, and that
Mm.
never stops. As long as you're an interior designer, you're always teaching why you're picking this. And once you have their trust, as I said, um, and the first part of it is they'll listen and say, well, maybe that hot pink sofa is really not the greatest idea. Um, I'm going to look like a frog on it. So
I can see that. I actually, with my limited design, genes here, I can see that if I really love a fuchsia pink sofa and it's cuz of course we all can understand don't pick out that fuchsia pink dress if you know your skin tones and like back in the day in the 80s it was like you were a fall, winter, spring or summer. I have no idea if that's still a thing, right? But like when
Yeah.
somebody did my colors for me when I remember I was the things you do when you are starting out in business and you're looking for every edge that you can, psychological as well as intellectual as well as actual experience. And here I am in window works. I'm starting out. I'm 20, 21 years old. I'm going into people's houses who were 35 and 40 and I thought they were like 500 years old and having to convince them
Right.
to spend thousands of dollars with me on window treatments. And I remember I said, I have to get my colors done. I have to always look professional. I have to wear the colors that enhance my skin because it's a design field. And if I look put together, it will translate. And of course, that was all very true, by the way. And I'm a fall, right? And so I
Yeah.
could see me sitting on a fuchsia sofa would be like, I'm sorry, you look horrendous in your own home, right? But I could also see making the mistake, not thinking about it and thinking, hey, I love color. Fuchsia's cool. Let's do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Funny, 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 funny. Okay. And so what else translates? So we're really you're asking the stories and how do you get the stories out of people? Cathy, is it look, I know how to get stories out of people. I do it all day long for a living. It's casual, inquisitive, listening,
Hmm.
all the things. But do you also have as part of a formal discovery process that you're getting some of this information? Like, is there basic information you want to get when you're just having that first phone call or first consult, and then the rest is that further diving deep? I mean, you're not asking on
Hmm.
a Q&A, what's your favorite mammal that swims to Africa? Like, or the shore frogs aren't, or toads aren't, whatever the hell they are, turtles aren't mammals,
Yeah.
but like, do you have some basic level that then from that you're using to jump on to get deeper, or is it all just off the cuff, interest, curiosity, and 30 years of practice?
Well, I'm probably like you. I'm very interested in people, and but I don't get started on phone calls. I think it's much more important to have that face to face, or at least Zoom to Zoom, um, and walk around their house with them and see just a photo on their table, or a surfboard on a wall, or a guitar leaning up. You'll find out that they love music and what kind of music. And oh yeah, I just went to that concert, and was it the light show amazing? And did you like the colors?
Right.
So yeah, it's a natural thing. But I usually wait until I get in their homes and really try to start seeing their space and them act in it.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. And I can see how you can learn a lot about a person by their surroundings. Okay. So when you have your process, somebody reaches out to your firm and says, I'm interested. What's the process? Do you not have a first phone call? Does someone else on your team have it? But in the first time you're meeting them, is that a consultation or there's a somewhat of a phone? Like, tell us how it goes.
Um, I usually try to get on the first conversation, and
Mm-hmm.
not that I answer the phone all the time, but I do try to get in and see what they really want. Are they really our client? Um, because we are high end. Some people get shocked when we tell them how much an average room will cost or what their home will cost. So we have to say those things gently and with great respect, but um, we do find out what they want and how they want to get there and what their budget is. Um, and I think budget is something that a lot of young designers are afraid to ask clients. um, and I don't care how wealthy my client is, they still have a budget.
Mm-hmm.
um, and I don't think we've ever had a client say yes to everything, um, even though they had the money to spend it. So everybody has a budget, and I think that's really important to clarify way up front. Um,
And are you doing that? So you're doing it to some extent in that first phone call because, again, if it's completely out of whack, the expectation, you're not taking the next step. So how do you do that, Cathy? What sorts of questions do you ask? Because we all know the way it goes. Do you have a budget? Well, I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we all know that's nonsense, but people don't want to reveal it either. Some people don't want to reveal it because they have, possibly whatever money they want to spend towards it, but they don't want to tell you that because they don't want you to spend as much as that if you don't need to. And then other people might not want to reveal it because they're just clueless. They have no idea what it costs to do interior design. And a third group of people might not want to reveal and answer that right out question because they might be embarrassed that they say the wrong amount. So how do you get that information out with, what is the actual tactics you use in that first question? Because it's not like you're in bed with them 3 weeks later where you're like, look, we got to get real here. The first question is softer, right? How do you do it?
Right. So most people only live in 2 or 3 houses their whole lives, right? So they don't know what things cost, and they don't know they've accumulated things over the years, and they have no idea what value they have in their homes, generally speaking. So the first thing is to educate them on the average cost of furnishing a home. And one of just a real simple equation is 25% of the value of your home is spent on the interiors. And that's just a good average. If it's $1 million house, you're going to be spending $250,000 on interiors. Or if it's 100,000, it's going to be 25,000. People are sometimes shocked by that because it seems like such a high number when in reality, by the time you get the sheets on the bed and the pillows and the rugs and the drapes, and you've spent a good amount of money. Just most people collect those things over the years and don't have a feel for what a whole redo is going to cost.
That's an awesome, enlightening thing to bring up to somebody. That if you hit somebody with, hey, this room is typically going to cost $50,000 or $40,000 or whatever it is, if they are taken aback, it's such an enlightening thing to say, if you took a look at the room now, just because you've been living in it for 15 years, you don't realize as it exists, you might have already spent $30,000 on it and it doesn't even look the way you want it to look. So for 50, yes, it's going to look the way you want it to look, right?
Right, exactly.
That's an interesting thought because it's true. When you're buying something 500 here, 5,000 there, 200 there, you don't really think about how much you've spent on your home over the years. And you've spent all that money. And for most of us, it's like, really? It doesn't even look like it, right?
Right. Yeah. Snip, snap. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great little tidbit there. And also you find now for your luxury high-end design, do you find that 25% is the amount, or is that for the regular Joes like us that have just been designing our homes, not designing, just filling our homes over the course of our years of living in it? So regular average person will spend 25% and high-end luxury might be more, or is high-end luxury that number pretty much?
High-end luxury is definitely that number. We typically go over it with a high-end home in a resort area. They're typically going to spend a little more. So not necessarily resort, but their permanent home. They want it forever, and they're going to do it right. So yeah, 35% is as high as we've gone.
Okay. But see, and even that, like, see, I always process these conversations if I was the consumer on the other end of this conversation. And, what I'm saying is I could buy it if you said to me, LuAnn, you moved into this townhouse 8 years ago. You've done it by yourself all along. You brought this in, you schlepped that in, you did this, you did that, and you don't realize it, but you probably spent 25% of the value of this townhouse over the last 8 years. The pictures that you're looking at on my website, That's about 35 or 40%. Like I would buy that all day long. Like I would buy that all day long. I'd be like, oh, yeah, I don't really want it to look like my 25%. I want it to look like that. And then I could make
Yeah.
a decision. And I feel like that's such a great little place because even if you said to me, it's going to cost you about 35 to make it look like this. Even if
Hmm.
I said, well, I love that, but can we do something for 25? Can we do something for 30? And if you
Hmm.
followed that up with, look, as we go through the process, we're going to pick this or pick that, pick this or pick that, this $10,000 chandelier, this $2,000 one. We have choices
Hmm.
along the way. I mean, that just feels so easy for me as a consumer to grasp.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
How did you come up with that? Did you learn it from somebody? Did you get it from your own data? Like how did you figure that out?
Yeah, that was something that I learned over time because I started seeing the numbers
Mm,
um, kind of tango with each other, and that was what it ended up. Now, in this day and age, when things are going for ridiculous amounts of money, 25% may be a little unrealistic. The real estate market is so hot, and things were going for, you know, 10, 20% over what they're really valued at, just because people are buying houses. Sometimes that's a little off. But yeah, it was just an overtime equation that I think everyone can relate to,
yeah.
and easily calculate, and then they can say, okay, I don't want to spend that much. I want to be at this budget, or um, okay, let's get started. We
Right.
like that client.
Yeah. We like that client is right. That's it.
Yeah,
Let's go. That sounds like fun.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. And so when you are so in that initial phone call, are
Mhm.
you asking them point blank the value of their home, or do you, from the time somebody else answers and you either get on the line or you call them back, are you Googling the property and you are just coming to the conversation knowing that their house is, say, a $2 million house? And so you won't, maybe you don't say, I know your house is a $2 million house because I stalked you, but you might say, for example, if your house happened to be $2 million, like how do you do
Uh-huh.
that? Because again, I'm visualizing this happening on that introductory call, and all day long we want to be upfront and we want to be direct, but there's a different level on that first call that we don't scare people away with, right?
Yeah. Well, oddly enough, it goes back to their passions. When I first start the conversation, I want to get to know them just slightly, not a lot. Um, what are you wanting to design? What do you have now? And they usually tell you, it looks like a romper room in here. I want to have guests over and feel proud of it. Or um, uh, I've got uh, I've got a train wreck here, and I need to redo the entire house and gut the kitchen, um, and then you can gently start talking about budget,
Mm,
and say, do you have a budget in mind? I don't try to tell them what I think their budget's going to be. I want them to tell me what their budget is, and a lot of times they don't know the answer to that.
mm-hmm.
And that goes back to our previous conversation. Well, this is an average. We can massage that budget either way, um, but it is a good average to listen to.
Okay. So one of the lines that I like to use is if I ask somebody a question and they're like, I don't know, and want them to know, I want them to know what I know, I will usually say,
Right.
would it be helpful for you if I shared with you some price ranges or some budgets, right? Because now you're
Yeah.
asking them for permission to talk about the money, right? It's like, we're going to have that conversation now. Are you ready? Right. And
Right.
so that's when I imagine you could say, for example, XYZ, XYZ. And do you often
Hmm.
have, how about, do you have at this point, are you established enough that when people call you, they know you, they know your firm, they know your aesthetic, they get the price point that you're in? Or do you still have the times, Cathy, when someone will say, you'll say, oh, so would you like me to give you some idea? And you say, okay, you can expect your furnishings to probably be, $250,000. And the person who says, oh, I thought it would be like 50 or 60. Like, do you have that at this
Uh-huh.
stage of your career, or that's not happening so much?
We still get those calls, and we get those people that want the look for. They think you know how to get that look for less because they've seen too much HGTV, but they or Pinterest, um, and we just have to stick to our guns because we're not good at that. We're horrible at it. We've tried to meet those lower budgets for people that we really care about, but carrying those lines and selling those lines that fall apart and the fabrics disintegrate, it is more work for us. Um, in the long run, and it's just not worth it. We'd rather sell products that we believe in and know are going to last, and there's a price to pay for that. And you do educate your client on that as well. To say we only buy sofas that are ergonomically wonderful to sit in. You're going to be comfortable with any sofa we put in your house or any chair because we've sat in them. We've asked the companies which chairs are better for tall men, short women, whatever. We want to know the level of quality that we put in your house is worth it.
So what I'm hearing is that there takes a moment, right? There takes a moment, which is probably several years, where you do the projects that you know you shouldn't be doing, and you do them in a way, like you said, at a lower budget. And
Mm-hmm.
ultimately is the aha that, as hard as it might be in the beginning to tell someone, no, I can't do this. We're not going to do this. The firm doesn't do that. That, as hard as that is, it's have you learned that it's not as hard in comparison to trying to do a project that you know you're not supposed to be doing?
Right. Um, Good question. I- We have gotten to the point where we do turn down, even if they say, I'll spend 30,000, I'll spend 50,000, but they want to furnish a 10,000 square foot home for that budget. And we know that it's going to look horrible and that we're going to have to go to IKEA, and it's not going to happen. Um, does that answer that question?
Yeah, I'm just, you know what it is I've learned is designers, any business owner that has 30 years experience, you just are really flexing the muscle of just seeing the result, the bad result at the beginning,
Hmm.
and having the willpower to say no to it is what I'm saying, is like
Yeah.
share
Oh, yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
you know what I mean, sharing that perspective, because we know that everybody that listens to the show knows that's what you're going for, but it's still one of the hardest things to do because here we are, whether we've got bills to pay, we've got payroll to make, maybe we're just competitive and we want to close every project. So that little, I always love to ask a seasoned designer that experience, that reflection back on how you came to start to say, this isn't a project for us, we're going to have to say no.
Right. That's a tough one to say. And we can soften that one too by offering. We have designers in our community that are just getting started, and they'll take those jobs, and they're really good at them. Um, so we can always do a gentle handoff, as I say.
Okay. And so that's what you do. You sit there and you say, you know what, sound like a great lady, but you're not my customer. You don't say that. That's inside voice. However, I have a great referral for you.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
But it takes that understanding that it's gonna go. I have to say, just this past week, a designer reached out to me and interestingly thought that the project was going to go forward, had gotten all the way to the point of the presentation. Whatever the point is that you get the money. Don't quote me on it, right? But whatever it is, the point where you get the money, the deposit to get going. And thought that they were, and this is a seasoned designer, knows her stuff, is not like unfamiliar with, isn't giving away too much before it's time to ask for money, but was just surprised at that point in the project, and in the lead up to it, that ultimately it was like, we're going to take the contract, we're going to take a look at it, we'll call you back. And then the next day was like, we've decided to go in a different direction. And what was interesting was that the designer, on one hand, was saying to me, there was a couple of things that weren't great, that in the conversation, in the relationship, in these, maybe they were together 5 or 6 hours at this point or whatever, cumulatively.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, she said, part of me wants to call them back up and say, I could do the project under these circumstances with this, blah, 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 blah. And she said, it's just almost like I just don't want to let it go because I know I can save it. But she was struggling with herself on the fact that it wasn't personally a great fit, right? Like, and so it's a
Right.
funny thing, isn't it?
Very funny thing. And I think that never stops as long as you're doing this work.
Mm-hmm.
You've got personality, you've got budgets, you've got expectations, and there's got to be a beautiful balance there before it becomes a beautiful project.
And so, in that scenario, would you walk away from it or would you call back and try and save it, at this point in your career based on your experience?
Call back and save it. That's a good question. I think I would probably call back and try to save it. Or maybe I would call back more to reassure myself and reassure the client that we're on the right track. Um, because maybe we didn't get the entire scenario fixed, and we weren't on the same sheet of music the first go around.
Mm.
And maybe we clarify it on the second go around and we get it. And if we don't, then I think there are gentle ways to, have your exit strategy and
Mm-hmm.
move on.
Okay. I
But
like that.
you don't want to just, I think, always give a second chance
Mm-hmm.
to something that you're not quite sure of. I've almost made some huge mistakes by not making that second phone call
Mm.
and clarifying
Mm-hmm. Well,
or
I have to
didn't hear it
say,
properly.
it's a funny thing for me because when I literally think about when I talk with the different designers about this sort of scenario, there is a
Hmm.
fine line because we talk all the time about working for people who value, working with and for people who understand what you bring to the table. And we talk all the time about, don't have any hard feelings and don't worry about the people who don't get it. There's another one around the corner who does understand your value. But there's a fine
Hmm.
line between that and really expecting there to be no bumps and expecting there to be no, disagreements or expecting there to be no missed expectations. And for me, because most of the clients that we work with at Window Works, we're only going to be engaged 6 to 8 weeks. Now, it doesn't mean we don't have projects with designers that start a measure project in September and don't install until May, but that's a person I
Hmm.
already have a relationship with, right? So the
Right.
average bare stranger that I meet that I like walk out the house and think, I wouldn't want to have a glass of wine with that person ever, right?
Right.
I'm
Right.
not going to be in the kind of relationship that you guys are being in. So I'm much more inclined to be like, yeah, I'll sell you as long as you pay my money and we're all good and you get the parameters. I don't have to really feel like we are good together, right? But at
Yeah.
the same
Yeah.
time, I understand for a designer who's going to do a project and be very involved that there is a layer of that needs to be important and needs to be there. But I feel like there's this little tiny thing that we're creating by having so
Hmm.
much conversation about needing and wanting and teaching your clients to understand your value that we almost expect too much from the consumer too. And when you
Very
said,
good.
right,
Hmm.
and when you said there to call back and clarify, I like that because you could be on the same page, but maybe we didn't do a good enough job explaining that page. And if we explain it, it's like, oh, I didn't know that's what you meant, Cathy. Okay, we're great. And now you're back on the track again. Or to your point, if at that point it's still not copacetic, then you know you did your best,
Right.
right?
I think that's important. Yeah. And going back to our original conversation, we truly are friends with our clients
Mm,
because we build up these wonderful relationships. And to me, it's a relationship business. Um, and I feel very strongly about that. It's not just going in there and getting a house done and making it look pretty and like a designer would. You want to, not all of our projects are photo worthy by
Mm,
a long shot
mm.
because we're fitting the client to their home. And that brings us more clients and more long-term clients. It's sometimes not about the best, absolute best design. It's about the best relationship.
That's an interesting statement right there. Not all of our projects are photo worthy. I think we can sometimes fool ourselves thinking that a high end luxury designer is always taking and doing the project that ends up with the great pictures. Interesting.
Yeah.
But in order to
Mm, yeah.
really deliver the type of personalized type, that you were describing, sometimes it probably isn't that photo worthy. It's beautiful design, it's executed, it's scale, proportion, color, texture, all the things, right? It just isn't what we expect to see in print.
Right. It's they've kept their Aunt Lulu's armoire that is some hideous shade of pink
Hey,
or
don't diss Aunt
whatever.
Lulu. I'm an Aunt Lulu.
All
Oh,
right,
that's
you remember that when you have that piece of furniture in your house, okay?
that's so funny. I'll have to send one to my niece. I'll say, here's a piece of Aunt Lulu's furniture that you can make fun of for the next 50 years.
That is so funny. I had an Aunt Lulu, that's why, and she gave
Yeah.
me all this furniture, and I just slowly had to sell it. It's terrible.
That's funny. I have one niece who calls me Lulu, Aunt Lulu. The
Cute.
others do not. Oh, that's funny. Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. So I like it. Very interesting. It's a little nuances in there, and I think that's the value of having 30 years experience, that we hear those little things in there that we know to be good business tenants, but how are they executed, right? Have you ever
Right.
had a client that didn't have something, special, turtles and, germs and all the things that, like really, I'm sitting here thinking, what would she do with me? Like, I'm like, I don't know that I would have anything that you would like. Have you ever had somebody you're just like, all right, there's nothing here about you. We're just going to make a pretty house.
You know, I don't think we have.
Just because you're good at what you do. Yeah, that's good.
I think people are so interesting.
Mm,
We did a bank once. Banks, commercial projects are totally different because you can't really find their passions, but
right.
you can find what they need, and what they need are deposits. That's how they make their money. And so we called the U.S. Treasury and got the PMT pallet for the dollar bill. And we
Ah.
used that pallet in the entire bank. And when you dropped a dollar bill on the floor, you could hardly see it. It was a mixed Berber type commercial carpet, but it had all those greens and a gold, actually, a creamy gold, and the different colors of green. And it just made you think money.
Wow. Wow.
Mm, yeah.
See, that is that level. When I think about you guys in your planning, mode with your team, and somebody, whether it's you or whatever, says, let's call the treasury and get the Pantone colors of a dollar bill. Like, what? You talk about want to be a fly on the wall in your scheming meetings.
Oh my gosh. You don't want to be in this mind. It's a little cuckoo
Ah,
sometimes.
that's so funny. I say that to my daughter all
Hmm.
the time. If anybody ever heard the conversations in my head all day, they just put a straitjacket on me. They just say, I'm sorry, this woman is certifiable. Do not let her in public.
Oh gosh.
That's
You're
amazing.
great.
That's funny. That's funny. I love it. Kath, I have one other thing that I've been bringing up to especially our white colleagues on the show, when they come to the
Mhm.
show. It's been such a painful year for so many of our black colleagues. It's been what we've learned. It's been a painful lifetime. But a lot of us are now coming to the party and trying to be the friend. And so, my question for you is, have you had any ahas or any learnings that have come to you based on the the Black Lives Matter movement is not a new movement, but
Mhm.
it's a different level this past year with many more white people coming to it and trying to spend some time and energy to learn about it and to learn about what our colleagues go through. Have you had any ahas or learnings in this past year in relation to this that maybe you had to look at yourself and say, you know what? I've been white my whole life. I didn't know that.
Exactly. Yes. I had a really big aha moment that kind of shocked me that I was so in a cloud about was a black friend of mine who lives in Eastern Tennessee. His mother lives in Eastern Tennessee, and he drives back and forth to visit her. And whenever he drives back and forth, because he's going through these back roads, he wears a blue button down and a blue blazer.
Mm.
Because if he gets pulled over, he doesn't want to look the part of a
Whoa.
criminal.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And it's something he had never shared with me. And all the times that he's gone to visit his mother, he does that scenario. Why would you want to wear a dress shirt when you're traveling 8 hours?
Right.
But that's what he does because he's learned to be fearful. And I can't imagine living a life where I had to dress so that I wouldn't be afraid if I got pulled over or
Wow.
I can't even fathom it.
No.
He's a super guy, and we all started talking about this during George Floyd, and I just really wanted to know some things that I was missing, um, because I, I feel like I'm an open, caring person, and I don't look at race as any deciding factor. Um, but when he put it that way, it just opened my eyes to a different level of fear that Black people live in, is
Mm.
specifically. And I can relate as a woman. There are a lot of women that can live in fear.
Mm-hmm.
Sexual abuse. They still live in fear,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a fine parallel there that fear rules a good part of their life.
Mm. Mm. Well, I
And I
think
don't
it's
like.
very interesting that here's a man that you've been friends with, and it was because of the murder of George Floyd that you had the conversation now. Like, that is the whole point, right? That
Hmm.
it's,
Hmm.
hey, I've known you, we're friends. How does this feel to you? What's happening to you? And then for him to share something that he's never shared with you before and to think about that, right? It's like, I think, and I hear you with the little bit of parallel about women and needing, maybe possibly being afraid of different things. But I think the eye-opening thing for me in that is when I'm a woman and I'm in a situation that is objectively could be tenuous, which means maybe I come out of a building or something late at night and I've got to walk to my car and it's night. So that's a layer that's external. It's like, hey, you left this building late by yourself, you dummy. Like, this wasn't very smart, right? But being
Hmm.
Black and driving in a car is not an external thing. That is literally, he's concerned that even if he is 10 miles over the speed limit and gets pulled over, that if he's not dressed in a certain way, he's risking being treated poorly, what we've learned already. And we always knew that anyway,
Yeah.
just by being Black. But being comfortable driving 8 hours to see your mom is not a good thing for him. So see the difference there? Like, I can choose not to walk out of that building alone. I can choose to call my husband. I can choose to ask the security guard. I can choose to go home in daylight, but I can't choose
Right.
to drive to Tennessee to see my mother and leave my Black skin at home. That's that's
Right.
that's that's the thing. That's the
That's so interesting.
right.
Yeah.
And that's what I've learned,
Beautiful.
with talking with white and Black people this last year is, that whole white, supremacy, that white, it's you don't need to be somebody that's practicing bias to get the advantage of being white. It's a whole different
Hmm.
spin for me on what it is. And that your story of your friend, I think, expresses that really very eye opening. Yeah.
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 It was eye-opening.
Well, that's it. The idea is to learn. The idea is to continue to talk to our friends, black and white, all the different colors in between, and make sure that we absolutely are understanding each person's experiences and taking the time to have compassion and empathy, and then also to being part of the change, right? And making sure that little by little this stuff doesn't happen. So,
Exactly.
all right. Well, I appreciate your sharing that story with us, Cathy, because, it is, and I love that it came from you asking your friend to share his feelings and his thoughts. And he could have said, I don't want to do it, lady, but he did. And then we're the benefit of the learnings of it. So appreciate both him and you for that.
Indeed. I'll let him know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I enjoyed our conversation very much. I'm not sure that my house matches my skin tone. Pretty sure it probably doesn't.
Well, I can do some damage here if you'd like me to, LuAnn.
Oh, my goodness. Anyway, well, I appreciate your spending your time with us today, Cathy. Thanks so much.
Thank you, LuAnn.
I just love doing this podcast. I mean, number one, because of you guys. You're amazing, right? And number two, I get to pick the brains of so many interesting people. It is like such a pleasure. And Cathy's process is one of those one-of-a-kind things. And I'm always thrilled to hear yet another way to build a great business, to build great relationships, and to put unique talents to work. So, what is at the core of Cathy's process? Listening, right? But it's more than that. She's taking everything in. She's watching how the client moves in their home. She's noting their physical features. She's noting the clothing and the accessories that they've chosen when she's in their closet, right? She makes a point to figure out as much as possible about the client, as much as she can see through their eyes, too. And then she uses her ears to awaken storytelling in her clients. Cathy puts priority on getting to know what's unique about her client, what they have a passion for, what fascinates them. It could be turtles or it could be germs, right? Cathy also, when she does ask them about it, what does she do? She steps back and listens. She really takes it in. And in the process of listening, avenues of possibility open up for Cathy, and her genius starts flowing. Her inspiration begins to take hold, and that spark, that little beautiful bit of inspiration starts to grow. Through attentive listening, she's able to tie her design back to their story. And this makes for very happy, very grateful, and very loyal clients. We all know it's important to listen to clients. If we don't listen, we can mess up anything in a project. We can mess up, a relationship, right? But Cathy's advice to listen, to take the time to focus, and to be aware is a good reminder. We could all do well to slow down just a little and give ourselves the space to be curious, right? And if you'd like to hear more about integrating story into interior design, I highly suggest you listen to number 77 with Katie Deedy and number 587 with Daryl Long. And I also want to just say, didn't you love Cathy's method of using education during the budget conversation with clients, right? When you're stating a statistic, the average cost of furnishing a home is 25% of the cost of the home. It removes those uncomfortable feelings that accompany money talk, right? Because we're not talking about their money. We're just talking about a statistic, right? It's easy math for the client to do in their head, and it provides a starting point for further conversation, and it also provides a starting point if that's when they need to jump ship, because maybe they'd had no idea, right? So, and you don't have to use that particular statistic. All businesses are different. You could say, projects with this square footage usually run in the X range. Whatever works for you. The idea is to create a conversation around education, around information, and not about their personal finances, right? So lots of great advice. I totally loved it. So much fun. I'm so happy that you could be with us today. My great thanks to Cathy as well. And what do you say? Do we all, make a point today to be an excellent listener, to be curious, and see what kinds of conversations and ideas it may spur? Yeah, let's do that. Decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at LuAnnNigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.